Hi, this is my speech on the war on drugs. In 1971, President Ronald Reagan declared drugs to be public enemy number one, and he increased the size and the funding of federal drug agencies, and he pushed measures such as mandatory sentencing and no-knock measures. The war on drugs was intended to reduce illegal possession of drugs, but instead the result was mass incarceration and villainization of addicts. These methods did not elicit good results. So today I'm here to argue that the war on drugs is based in bad methodology and there are better ways to help people addicted to drugs. I'll start with the problems of the war on drugs, the causes as to why the war on drugs was such a long-lasting campaign, and the solutions to help addicts and to reduce harm. So moving on to the problems. A big problem in the beginning of the war on drugs is that they just started arresting anybody that was in possession of drugs, no matter what amount. So this means that even if you were a suffering addict, you were thrown in jail and you weren't given the resources that you needed to get better. This resulted in mass incarceration. According to Lloyd Steffen in March 6, 2018, policymakers advanced the war on drugs in ways that sustained a culture of violence by incarcerating nonviolent people and failing to issue just punishments. Another problem is that the war on drugs unjustly affected Black communities and lower socioeconomic groups. According to Vanessa Lynn in June 2018, the war on drugs is a continuation of the war on crime, and it's inscribed in these enduring stereotypes embedded in racism. The neighborhoods that are affected by the war on drugs were already subjected to economic and social structure violence, and these affected communities couldn't afford to lose so many working age people. When you lose so many working age people, you lose all the economic opportunities that you have in this neighborhood. So in addition, afterwards, after people get out of jail for drugs, according to Jamila Jefferson Jones in July 2018, when individuals return, they bring the wounds of the war on drugs in the forms of stigmas of ex-offender and resulting consequences of conviction. So because of their previous charges, they're unable to get jobs. Moving on to the causes. The war on drugs is really based on an outdated medical mindset. So what this means is that drugs aren't actually as addictive as one may think. Although I'm not saying you should try them, but they're not as addictive as the media portrays them to be. So according to Christine Minhee in spring 2019, sudden cessation, though it is odd, is supported by science. When opioid use is monitored and tapered to avoid the side effects of withdrawal, you have a low risk of re-addiction. And also according to a lab test where they presented somebody with an option of substance abuse over a competing reinforcer such as food or money, drug use is less likely. Another cause is that the media often does public fear-mongering. So in my research, I found that rises in opioid popularity is often after a war. So like the Civil War or the Vietnam War. And people often have a desire to self-medicate after all these stressful times. So campaigns to end the drug use would often be along the lines of, drugs make you die, drugs are bad, without like a real explanation of why somebody shouldn't be using these drugs. So it's just like spreading just this fear of drugs. Another cause is that the methodology that the war on drugs went about to like display this. So like I said, with the fear mongering. According to Khalid Tanasti in the spring and summer of 2019, evidence suggests that the war on drugs has failed to achieve its stated objectives of eliminating and reducing the production and consumption of trafficking of illegal drugs. So moving on to the solutions. we can treat dependent users. And instead of criminalizing these people that have actual health problems, we can give them care and we can give them resources in order to help themselves and in order to get themselves out of this bad place that they're in. So according to Alexander Sharp in December 16, 2020, in the past 40 years, the concept of harm reduction has become a viable and even a compelling alternative to abstinence as a response to addiction. So what harm reduction means is like reducing the extremely dangerous parts of drug addiction. So like spreading of diseases through dirty needles or contaminated drugs. So offering free drug testing or even programs where you can swap out dirty needles for clean ones. Another solution would be to decriminalize drugs. So with decriminalizing drugs, you are able to control their presence, control the way that they come in, and you can also be able to test their content. So it would dramatically reduce the riskiness of doing drugs. However, according to Joshua Falcon in 2021, the legalization of certain drugs has not been considered a serious possibility within the US, with the sole exception of Oregon's decriminalization of drug possession passing in the 2020 election. Another solution would be that we can focus on the right criminals instead. So focusing on drug trafficking offenders over possession. So according to Yuri Fedotov in the spring and summer of 2019, 5 times as many people come in contact with authorities for drug possession over drug trafficking. So to wrap this all up, the war on drugs is based in a bad methodology, and there are better ways to help people addicted to drugs. And I went over the problems with the war on drugs, the causes as to why the war on drugs was such a long-lasting campaign, and the solutions to help addicts reduce harm. And I hope that I was able to convince you guys that the war on drugs is a bad campaign based in bad methodology, and yeah.